Daniel Carter had once been a man who carried sunlight in his smile. As a senior editor at the Chronicle, he spent his days shaping stories, polishing prose, coaxing meaning from chaos. Words were his craft. His office was a sanctuary of cluttered desks and the rich. The hum of the printing press, a steady heartbeat beneath the floor. At home, the warmth was even brighter. Emma, his wife of 12 years, was a painter. Her hands always smudged with charcoal or cobalt blue, her laughter like wind chimes in their sunlit kitchen. Lily, their 8-year-old daughter, was a whirlwind of scraped knees and bedtime stories. Their house, a renovated Victorian on the edge of town, was alive with creaking floors and the smell of Emma's lavender candles. Daniel had loved that house, loved the way the morning light spilled through the stained glass window above the stairs, fracturing into rainbows across the walls. Loved the way Lily's tiny footsteps padded down the hallway at dawn, her voice singing, "Daddy, wake up." The day's starting. He had loved his life. And then, something began to love it too. It started with the typewriter. The old Royal Quiet Deluxe had been a gift from Emma, a relic from the paper's early days. Daniel used it for first drafts, savoring the mechanical clack-clack of the keys. One night, working late, he heard it. A single key striking on its own. He froze. The machine was off. The letter E key depressed, then the A, then slowly, deliberately, he typed Daniel. The air in the room grew thick, syrupy. The scent of lavender twisted into something older, fouler. Wet earth and rust. Daniel wrenched the power cord from the wall. The typing didn't stop. Daniel told himself it was stress. Late nights at the paper, constant deadlines. The creeping dread that had settled into his bones like a second shadow. He drank more coffee, slept less. Blamed the flickering hallway light on faulty wiring. But then the words started appearing, not just on the typewriter. Now they came in the margins of his edited articles, scrawled in a handwriting that wasn't his. "You're not listening. They can hear you." At first, he thought it was a prank. Maybe Simmons from the printing room had a sick sense of humor. But when he confronted him, Simmons just stared, confused. "Danny, you look like hell." That night, Daniel worked late again. The office was empty. The only sound, the hum of the fluorescent lights and the occasional creak of the old building settling. He rubbed his eyes, trying to focus on the manuscript in front of him. A local interest piece about a new bakery opening downtown. Then he saw it. A single sentence, written in the margin in jagged, ink-heavy letters. She tasted like almonds. His stomach lurched. Emma's favorite dessert was almond cake. She'd baked one just last weekend, laughing as Lily licked frosting from her fingers. Daniel's hands shook as he flipped through the rest of the pages. More words, more phrases. "The car's brakes will fail on the curve. You'll watch them die." His breath came in short, panicked bursts. He tore the papers apart, scattering them across his desk. The overhead light flickered, casting jagged shadows. And then, a whisper, so close it brushed against his ear like a physical touch. "You should have listened." Daniel spun around, knocking his chair over. The office was empty, but in the darkened glass of the window, Just for a second, he saw something behind him. A shape, tall, thin, smiling. Then the light surged back on, and the reflection was gone. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He sat in his car outside the house for an hour, staring at the warm glow of the kitchen window, watching Emma move around inside. He couldn't bring himself to go in. What if the thing followed him home? What if it was already there? The next morning, the phone rang with the news of his world ending. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and grief. Daniel stood in the too bright hallway, his hands still streaked with soot from where he'd clawed at the wreckage, as if his bare fingers could bend steel, as if desperation alone could undo what had been done. The doctors had spoken in slow, measured tones, their words landing like stones. "We did everything we could. I'm so sorry." Emma's wedding band, recovered from the scene, sat heavy in his pocket. Lily's stuffed rabbit, the one she'd refused to sleep without, had been found 30 feet from the car, miraculously untouched by the flames. The sight of it, pristine amidst the carnage, made bile rise in his throat. The funeral was a blur of black suits and murmured condolences. People touched his shoulder, their mouths moving soundlessly. The caskets were too small, the flowers too bright. When the first shovelful of earth hit the wood, Daniel felt something inside him snap like a frayed wire. That night, the house screamed with silence. He wandered through rooms frozen in time. Emma's half-finished canvas still on the easel, Lily's cereal bowl still in the sink. The lavender candles had burned down to stubs. The stained glass window cast fractured light across the stairs, but the colors were wrong now, sickly and dim. Then the whispers started, not just at night, not just in shadows. They slithered from the walls themselves, hissing through the vents, dripping from the ceiling like poison. You were supposed to protect them. You failed. Daniel stopped eating, stopped sleeping. His reflection in the bathroom mirror grew gaunt, his eyes sunken and wild. Sometimes, when he blinked, the man in the glass kept staring, lips peeling back from teeth that were just a little too sharp. He found the first photograph 3 weeks after the burial. It sat on the mantel, wedged between family portraits, a Polaroid he'd never seen before. The image showed their car, twisted and smoking, but in the driver's seat, Emma was still moving. Her mouth stretched wide in a scream no one had heard. Her fingers clawed at the shattered windshield, and pressed against the back window, small hands smearing the glass, was Lily. Daniel vomited onto the carpet. When he looked again, the photo was blank. That's when the thing stepped out of the hallway mirror. Not a shadow, not a trick of the light. It moved with deliberate jerking steps, its elongated limbs bending all wrong. The space where its face should have been pulsed like static on a dead channel. It tilted its head. The air turned to ice, and then it spoke in Emma's voice. "You were home when we called for you." Daniel ran. He didn't stop until his lungs burned and his knees gave out, collapsing in the overgrown field behind their house. The moon painted everything in shades of bone. Somewhere in the dark, a child's laughter echoed. When he finally dragged himself back inside, the words, "Come see," were finger-painted in mud across the living room wall. Beneath them, barely visible in the gloom, something had etched a single sentence into the hardwood floor. "The hollow man always gets what he's owed." Daniel stopped trying to explain what was happening. The police had dismissed him when he tried to report the break-ins, the ones where nothing was stolen, only moved. Emma's hairbrush placed in the refrigerator. Lily's drawings tacked to the ceiling. The front door found wide open every morning, the deadbolt still engaged. His co-workers at the Chronicle stopped meeting his eyes. They'd seen the way his hands shook when he turned pages, how he flinched at the sound of the printing press, when he showed up with a split lip, the bathroom mirror, his own fist, and claimed he'd fallen. Simmons pulled him aside. "Danny, you need help." But Daniel knew no doctor could fix this. The thing was getting bolder. It no longer hid in reflections, it replaced them. He'd catch it standing behind him in shop windows, its hollow face pressed against the glass. It left gifts in his pockets, gravel from the crash site, Emma's ear encrusted with something dark. Once, he woke to find his typewriter hammering away on its own. The carriage returned pinging madly as it spat out a single sentence over and over. "You promised to keep them safe." The worst was the phone. It would ring at 2:17 a.m. every night. When he answered, all he heard was wet, ragged breathing, the kind a person makes when their ribs are shattered. Then Lily's voice, small and broken. "Daddy, why didn't you come?" He stopped answering. The calls kept coming. One rain-lashed evening, Daniel found himself at St. Agnes's, the oldest church in town. The priest, Father Alvarez, listened without interruption as he spilled the whole insane story. The whispers, the photographs, the thing wearing his dead wife's voice. "What you're describing," the priest said slowly, "isn't a ghost." He led Daniel to the church archives, where yellowed newspapers from 1923 showed a strikingly familiar face in the crime section. Local Manslay's family claims Hollow One made him do it. The article described a farmer who butchered his wife and children, then told police the Hollow Man ate my love first. Before his hanging, he'd screamed that it would come back, that it always did. Some entities, Father Alvarez said, feed on grief. They attach to tragedy and grow fat on it. He touched the newspaper. "This thing has been here before." Daniel's hands were numb. "How do I kill it?" The priest hesitated. "You don't. You survive it." That night, Daniel dreamed of the crash, not as it happened, but as it could have. He saw himself answering the phone that morning, saw him racing to the curve where Emma's brakes failed, saw him pulling them both from the wreck seconds before the gas tank exploded. When he woke, his pillow was soaked with sweat and tears, and sitting on his nightstand was a new Polaroid. This one showed the three of them, alive, smiling, with something tall and faceless standing just behind the frame. Written on the back in child's handwriting, "We could have stayed." Daniel finally understood. This wasn't punishment, it was a feast, and he was the main course. The house no longer felt like a home. It had become a living tomb. Daniel sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the gasoline canisters lined up along the wall. The sharp, chemical stink cut through the lingering scent of Emma's lavender candles. His hands, once skilled at coaxing stories from typewriter keys, now trembled as he unscrewed the first cap. "You can't burn us out." The voice came from the hallway. Emma's cadence, but warped, stretched too thin. Daniel didn't turn around. He kept pouring, the fuel soaking into the hardwood where Lily had once built pillow forts. "We're in the walls now," the thing continued, "closer now." The air grew thick with the smell of wet soil and copper. In the pipes, in your blood. Daniel struck the match. The flame danced in his shaking hand, casting monstrous shadows up the walls. For the first time, he saw it clearly. Not a reflection or a silhouette, but the Hollow Man itself. 7 feet of sinew and stretched skin, its featureless face inches from his own. Up close, its surface wasn't smooth but moving, swirling with faces, Emma's, Lily's, the farmer from 1923, countless others. "You'll just make us angrier," it whispered through stolen lips. Daniel exhaled, dropped the match. The explosion of heat and light sent him stumbling back. Flames raced up the curtains, devouring family photos, the typewriter, Lily's stuffed rabbit. The Hollow Man didn't scream. It laughed, a sound like breaking glass, as its form bubbled and blackened. "You think fire can kill our hunger," it taunted, stepping through the inferno untouched. "We'll find you again. We always..." Daniel swung the gasoline canister with all his strength. The metal connected with a sickening crunch. The Hollow Man reeled, its perfect surface dented, leaking something dark and thick. For the first time it looked surprised. Outside, sirens wailed. Daniel ran. He didn't stop at the property line, didn't look back at the collapsing roof. He ran until his lungs burned and his legs gave out in the middle of Route 17, where a passing truck nearly killed him. The driver screamed curses. Daniel just laughed, tasting blood and ashes on his tongue. He was free, wasn't he? 1 year later, Daniel Carter sits in a diner 3 states away. His hands don't shake anymore when he picks up a pen. The byline under his latest article reads James Dahl, but the words are his own. Outside, autumn leaves skitter across the parking lot. The waitress refills his coffee. "You're our last customer," she says. "Storm's coming in." Daniel nods, turning the page of his notebook, then freezes. There, in the margin, faint but unmistakable, are 2 words in ink that wasn't there before. "Found you." The bell above the door chimes. No one comes in. Daniel's coffee went cold. The diner's fluorescent lights flickered as the storm outside gathered strength, wind howling against the windows. His fingers hovered over the notebook, the words, "Found you," pulsing like a fresh wound. The bell above the door still swayed gently, though no one had entered. He exhaled slowly, then closed the notebook with deliberate calm. No more running. Daniel spent the next 3 days in the town's library, scouring records older than the church archives Father Alvarez had shown him. He found more cases, not just the farmer from 1923, but others scattered across decades. A factory worker in 1947 who drowned his family in the bathtub. A school teacher in 1971 who locked her classroom and set it ablaze with herself and her students inside. All of them had left behind the same phrase, scrawled in frantic handwriting. The Hollow Man took them. But in a crumbling, water-damaged journal from 1898, Daniel found something different. A confession from a priest who claimed to have trapped the entity. The method was vague, but one passage stood out. It fears the naming. It fears the voice of the taken. He learned it was no mere ghost, but something far older. A remnant of the first grief ever felt, a shadow cast by the first human to ever bury a loved one. It had no true form, only the hollows it carved into the living, feeding on their sorrow until nothing remained. He found the truth. The Hollow Man could only exist as long as its victims remained unnamed, their love reduced to fuel for its hunger. Daniel's hands shook, not with fear, but with something sharper. Purpose. He drove back to the ruins of his old home under a moonless sky. The scorched husk of the house stood like a rotten tooth against the horizon. The air still smelled of smoke and something sour beneath it. Daniel stepped through the collapsed front door, flashlight cutting through the gloom. The Hollow Man would be here. It always was. A whisper from the blackened hallway. "You came back to us." Emma's voice, Lily's laugh, the sound of it coiled around his ribs like a vice. Daniel didn't flinch. "No," he said, "I came to end you." The temperature plummeted. Shadows thickened, pooling at his feet like oil. The Hollow Man emerged from the ruins of the kitchen, its form shifting, sometimes Emma's face, sometimes Lily's, sometimes the faceless void. "You can't," it hissed. "We are your grief. We are your guilt. You cannot kill what you carry." He brought out a note where he wrote down everyone's name he could find that was taken by the Hollow Man. He spoke the words that would unravel it, not a spell, but a reckoning. One by one, he called out the names of every soul, reclaiming their stories from the dark, until all that remained was Emma and Lily. With their names on his lips and their memories burning bright in his heart, he severed the last tether binding the creature to this world, watching as it dissolved like mist in sunlight, its endless hunger finally starved into nothing. Then silence. True silence. Daniel stood in the ruins as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon. The weight in his chest, the one he'd carried since the crash, was gone. Not faded, gone. He knelt, pressing his palm to the charred floor where Lily's laughter had once echoed. "Goodbye," he whispered. Then he walked away and did not look back. In the years that followed, Daniel rebuilt his life, not by forgetting, but by refusing to let his love for them become a wound. He wrote their names where the light could reach them, told their stories to anyone who would listen, and in doing so, ensured the Hollow Man could never return. The entity had thrived on silence, on grief left to fester in the dark. But Daniel denied it that feast. Where others might have let loss consume them, he chose remembrance, and in that choice, he found not just victory, but peace. The Hollow Man had taken so much, but it could never take this. The unbroken thread of love that outlasted even death, brighter and more enduring than any shadow. Thank you for watching and listening. See you next time, another day, with another chilling story. Till then, stay well, stay safe.